Get comfortable, close your eyes, and let me take you on a gentle journey through the surprisingly deep world of Family Guy. Tonight, we're going to explore the hidden layers, the forgotten stories, and the intricate details that make up one of television's most enduring animated series. This isn't your typical Family Guy experience filled with cutaway gags and rapid-fire jokes. Instead, we're diving into the quieter side of Quahog, where stories unfold slowly and mysteries reveal themselves like pages in a well-worn book. Picture yourself settling into the most comfortable spot in your home, perhaps the same way Peter Griffin settles into his beloved chair at the Drunken Clam. The familiar weight of routine, the comfort of knowing exactly where everything belongs, and the gentle rhythm of a world that somehow makes sense despite all its chaos. That's where we're going tonight, into the heart of what makes Family Guy more than just a comedy show. Let's begin our journey in the early days, back when Family Guy was just a spark of an idea in Seth MacFarlane's imagination. The year was 1995. And MacFarlane was a young animator fresh out of the Rhode Island School of Design. He created a short film called The Life of Larry, featuring a character who would eventually become Peter Griffin. But Larry was different from Peter in subtle ways that tell us something important about how stories evolve and grow over time. In those earliest concepts, the family dynamics were softer, more grounded in reality. The humor came from observation rather than spectacle. MacFarlane was drawing from his own experiences growing up in Connecticut, watching how families really interacted when no one was performing for an audience. The quiet moments between the big events, the small conversations that happen in kitchens and living rooms when the day is winding down. The Griffin house itself tells a story that many people overlook. Located at 31 Spooner Street in Quahog, Rhode Island, this fictional address represents something deeper than just a setting for comedy. The house is modest, middle class, lived in. The wallpaper is slightly dated. The furniture shows signs of daily use, and there's always something slightly askew that suggests real people live here, not television characters. If you've ever noticed the way light filters through the Griffin living room windows during different episodes, you'll see that the animators pay careful attention to time of day and season. Morning light has a different quality than evening light, and winter episodes show the subtle blue-gray tones that anyone who's lived in New England recognizes immediately. These details create a sense of place that goes beyond the jokes, grounding the fantastic elements in something real and familiar. Peter Griffin himself is often dismissed as simply a loud, obnoxious character designed for easy laughs. But when you look closer, when you pay attention to the quieter moments, you see something more complex. Peter represents the struggle of many middle-aged men who feel caught between the expectations of adulthood and the desire to remain young at heart. His job at the brewery, his friendship with his co-workers, his genuine love for his family despite his obvious flaws. These elements create a character who is both ridiculous and surprisingly human. Consider Peter's relationship with his father-in-law, Francis Griffin. Their conflicts aren't just about comedy. They represent a clash between generations, between different ways of seeing the world. Francis, with his strict religious views and rigid moral code, represents an older America, while Peter embodies a more casual, irreverent approach to life. Their arguments, when you strip away the exaggerated elements, echo conversations happening in living rooms across the country. Lois Griffin, too, is more than she initially appears. Her background as a member of the wealthy Pewter-Schmidt family adds layers to her character that aren't always front and center. She chose to marry Peter, chose the middle-class life, chose to prioritize family over the privilege she grew up with. This choice reverberates through many episodes in subtle ways, informing her reactions to situations and her approach to problems. The way Lois handles the chaos that constantly surrounds her family reveals a kind of quiet strength. She's the anchor that keeps the Griffin household from completely spinning out of control. Watch her in the background of scenes sometime, and you'll notice how she's always doing something. Cleaning up a mess, preparing a meal, mediating a conflict. She's the invisible infrastructure that makes the visible comedy possible. Brian Griffin presents perhaps the most interesting character study in the entire series. an anthropomorphic dog who writes novels, drinks martinis, and engages in philosophical discussions, Brian serves as both the family's voice of reason and its most pretentious member. But his character represents something deeper about the struggle between artistic ambition and practical reality. Brian's novels never get published, his political activism rarely accomplishes anything concrete, and his romantic relationships consistently fail. Yet he continues trying, continues believing that his next project will be the one that breaks through. This persistence in the face of repeated failure makes him oddly admirable, even when his intellectual posturing becomes insufferable. He represents the part of all of us that refuses to give up on our dreams, even when evidence suggests we probably should. The relationship between Brian and Stewie has evolved over the years into something genuinely touching. What started as a simple premise, a sophisticated baby and an intellectual dog, has become a friendship between two characters who recognize something of themselves in each other. They're both outsiders in their own family, both struggling with identity and purpose, both searching for meaning in a world that often seems meaningless. Stewie Griffin, the evil genius baby, carries perhaps the heaviest burden of any character in the show. His advanced intelligence, trapped in an infant's body, creates a kind of existential prison. He understands the world around him better than most adults, but he's powerless to change his circumstances. This fundamental frustration drives much of his behavior, from his elaborate schemes to his constant threats of matricide. But Stewie's character has softened over the years, revealing vulnerability beneath the villainy. His relationship with his mother has evolved from antagonistic to genuinely affectionate. His sexuality, hinted at but never explicitly confirmed, adds another layer of complexity to a character who already struggles with identity and belonging. Stewie represents the pain of being misunderstood, of having thoughts and feelings that the world isn't ready to accept. Meg Griffin occupies a unique position in the Family Guy universe as the perpetual outsider. While the treatment she receives from her family is often cruel beyond what real families would tolerate, her character represents something painfully real about adolescence. The feeling of being invisible, unwanted, fundamentally flawed in ways that everyone else can see, but you can't fix. The running joke of everyone hating Meg becomes less funny when you consider what it might feel like to be her. High school is difficult enough without your own family treating you as an embarrassment. Yet Meg persists, continues hoping for acceptance, continues trying to find her place in the world. Her resilience, rarely acknowledged within the show itself, is actually quite remarkable. Chris Griffin, the gentle giant of the family, provides a different perspective on teenage life. While Meg struggles with social rejection, Chris seems largely oblivious to social hierarchies. His innocence, while sometimes played for laughs, also serves as a reminder of what we lose as we grow older and become more aware of how cruel the world can be. The supporting characters of Quahog create a rich tapestry of small-town life. Glenn Quagmire, the sex-obsessed neighbor, represents unchecked desire and the consequences of living without moral boundaries. Cleveland Brown, before his move to Virginia, served as Peter's most loyal friend, the voice of reason who was usually ignored but never gave up trying to help. Joe Swanson, the wheelchair-bound police officer, demonstrates how disability doesn't define a person's worth or capabilities. His enthusiasm for life, his dedication to his job, and his fierce competitiveness in sports show a character who refuses to be limited by his circumstances. Joe's presence in the show normalizes disability in a way that's both respectful and matter-of-fact. The Drunken Clam, Quahog's local bar, serves as more than just a setting for Peter's adventures. It represents a particular kind of American institution, the neighborhood bar where working-class men gather to escape the pressures of daily life. The conversations that happen there, while often ridiculous, echo real discussions about work, family, politics, and dreams deferred. Jerome, the bartender, observes it all with the wisdom that comes from listening to people's problems night after night. He rarely offers advice, but his presence provides stability in a place where emotions run high and judgment is temporarily suspended. The drunken clam is a sanctuary where the ordinary rules of polite society don't apply, where men can be honest about their fears and failures without losing face. The Pawtucket Brewery, where Peter works, represents the changing nature of American manufacturing. It's not the steel mill or automotive plant that previous generations might have worked in, but it still provides the steady employment that allows families like the Griffins to maintain their middle-class lifestyle. The brewery's various corporate changes throughout the series reflect the instability that many American workers have experienced in recent decades. Peter's co-workers, Opie, Joe, and Quagmire during his brief stint there, create a workplace dynamic that many viewers recognize from their own jobs. The casual conversations, the small rebellions against management, the friendships formed over shared frustrations, these elements ground the show's more fantastical elements in workplace reality that feels authentic. Quahog itself, while fictional, captures the essence of small New England towns. The layout includes all the necessary elements: a downtown area with small businesses, residential neighborhoods with tree-lined streets, and enough local institutions to support community life. The recurring locations like the grocery store, the post office, and various restaurants create a sense of place that makes Quahog feel real, despite the surreal events that occur there. The weather in Quahog follows New England patterns: snowy winters, mild springs, hot summers, and colorful autumns. These seasonal changes affect the characters' daily lives in subtle ways. Winter episodes often show characters bundled in coats and dealing with snow, while summer episodes feature barbecues and outdoor activities. These details create continuity and realism that supports the show's more outrageous elements. Family Guy's approach to time is interesting and worth considering as we wind down our journey tonight. Unlike shows with strict continuity, Family Guy exists in a kind of floating timeline where characters don't age and consequences rarely carry over from episode to episode. This allows for maximum creative freedom, but also creates a sense of eternal present that can be oddly comforting. The Griffin family remains frozen at particular life stages. Meg will always be the awkward teenager. Chris will always be the sweet-natured high schooler. Stewie will always be the brilliant baby. This stability provides viewers with the comfort of knowing that no matter how chaotic individual episodes become, the fundamental relationships will remain constant. The cutaway gags that Family Guy is famous for serve a function beyond simple comedy. They represent the way human minds actually work, constantly making connections, remembering random events, getting distracted by tangential thoughts. While these segments are often criticized for disrupting narrative flow, they actually mirror the way we experience consciousness, jumping from thought to thought in patterns that don't always make logical sense, but feel natural to us. The show's references to popular culture create a shared language between the creators and viewers. When Family Guy references a movie, television show, or historical event, it assumes a level of cultural literacy that creates intimacy between the show and its audience. These references also serve as time capsules, preserving moments from specific eras in American culture. The music in Family Guy deserves special attention as we prepare for sleep. The show's original compositions, from Stewie's elaborate musical numbers to the simple melodies that accompany quiet moments, demonstrate sophisticated understanding of how music affects emotion. The orchestral score swells during dramatic moments, softens during tender scenes, maintaining its essential character. The simple, clean lines and bright colors create a visual language that's both accessible and distinctive. The character designs, while seemingly basic, actually demonstrates in Family Guy reflects their personalities. Peter's movements are often clumsy and enthusiastic, reflecting his impulsive nature. Lois moves with purpose and grace, suggesting her competence and self-control. Brian's movements are more human-like than dog-like, reinforcing his role as the family's intellectual. Stewie's movements combine baby-like physicality with adult-like precision, highlighting his unique position between childhood and sophistication. The Griffin family home changes subtly throughout the series, with rooms occasionally rearranged and new details added. These changes suggest the natural evolution of a lived-in space. Furniture gets replaced, decorations change with the seasons, and wear patterns develop in places where characters spend the most time. These details create the impression of a real home where real people have made real memories. As we near the end of our journey through Family Guy lore, it's worth considering what the show reveals about American family life in the early 21st century. The Griffins face many of the same challenges as real families: financial pressures, generational conflicts, changing social norms, and the difficulty of maintaining connections in an increasingly fragmented world. The show's longevity suggests that it touches something universal about family dynamics. Despite the exaggerated circumstances and impossible situations, the core relationships ring true. Parents worry about their children, siblings compete for attention, spouses negotiate the balance between individual desires and family responsibilities, and everyone struggles with the gap between who they want to be and who they actually are. The recurring themes of acceptance and belonging run throughout Family Guy's episodes. Characters search for their place in the world, sometimes finding it in unexpected places or through unlikely relationships. The show suggests that family isn't just about blood relations, but about choosing to care for each other despite obvious flaws and frequent disappointments. The community of Quahog, with all its eccentric residents and improbable situations, represents an idealized version of small-town life where everyone knows everyone else and shared experiences create bonds that survive even the most ridiculous conflicts. It's a place where consequences can be reset with each new episode, where mistakes can be forgiven, and where tomorrow always offers a fresh start. As you drift toward sleep, think about the gentle rhythms of daily life in Quahog, the morning routine of getting the family ready for school and work, the comfortable predictability of Peter's job at the brewery, the evening gatherings at the Drunken Clam where friends share their thoughts and frustrations. These ordinary moments, scattered between the extraordinary adventures, create the foundation that makes everything else possible. The love that binds the Griffin family together isn't always obvious, often buried beneath layers of sarcasm, conflict, and mutual frustration. But it's there in the small gestures: Lois making Peter's favorite meal after a difficult day, Brian staying up late to help Stewie with a project, Meg defending her family despite their treatment of her, Chris offering innocent observations that accidentally provide exactly the wisdom someone needed to hear. Let the warm familiarity of the Griffin household surround you now. Picture the soft glow of the television in their living room, the comfortable wear patterns on their favorite chairs, the family photos scattered throughout the house that document years of shared experiences. Feel the sense of belonging that comes from being part of something larger than yourself, even when that something is imperfect and often chaotic. The stories we've explored tonight reveal Family Guy as more than simple entertainment. It's a meditation on what it means to be human in contemporary America, an exploration of how families function when stripped of pretense, and a reminder that love persists even in the most unlikely circumstances. The show's ability to find humor in everyday frustrations while maintaining genuine affection for its characters creates a unique space in popular culture where viewers can laugh at themselves while feeling understood. As sleep approaches, let yourself settle into the rhythms we've discovered together: the predictable chaos of the Griffin household, the reliable friendship of the Drunken Clam regulars, the seasonal changes that mark time's passage in Quahog. These elements create a world that's both fantastical and familiar, where anything can happen but fundamental truths about human nature remain constant. Rest now in the knowledge that somewhere in the animated landscape of television, the Griffin family continues their daily routines. Peter will wake up tomorrow ready for another adventure. Lois will organize whatever chaos emerges. Brian will pursue his literary ambitions with renewed optimism. Stewie will scheme and dream in equal measure. Meg will hope for acceptance while finding strength in solitude. And Chris will greet each new day with innocent enthusiasm. The gentle humor and unexpected wisdom we've uncovered tonight will remain with you, providing comfort and perspective as you navigate your own daily adventures. The world of Family Guy, with all its absurdity and heart, reminds us that families are imperfect, life is unpredictable, and laughter really can be the best medicine for whatever challenges we face. Sweet dreams, and may your rest be as peaceful as a quiet evening in Quahog, where the street lights cast gentle shadows on familiar sidewalks and the promise of tomorrow's adventures waits patiently for morning to arrive. Have you ever wondered what happens when you dive deep into the twisted, chaotic universe of Family Guy, while your brain is winding down for sleep? Tonight, we're going on a journey through the most bizarre, darkest, and surprisingly complex lore hidden beneath the surface of Seth MacFarlane's animated masterpiece. From alternate realities to character deaths that actually matter, from time travel paradoxes to the secret history of Quahog itself, this is going to be the most comprehensive exploration of Family Guy's hidden depths you've ever experienced. But before we begin our descent into this animated rabbit hole, let me warn you. What you're about to discover might change how you see those seemingly random cutaway gags forever. Because underneath all that crude humor and pop culture references lies a narrative so intricate and dark that it makes other animated series look like children's picture books. So get comfortable, dim those lights, and prepare to have your mind blown as we uncover the secret lore of Family Guy that most viewers never notice. Our story begins not with the Griffins we know today, but with a question that haunts every longtime viewer. How many times has this family actually died? The answer is more disturbing than you might think. Throughout the series, we've witnessed multiple universe resets, character resurrections, and timeline manipulations that suggest something far more sinister is happening in Quahog than meets the eye. Let's start with Brian Griffin, whose death in Season 12 wasn't just a ratings stunt. It revealed something crucial about the Family Guy universe. When Brian was killed by a car, the emotional weight of his death felt different from the usual cartoon violence we're accustomed to. But here's where it gets interesting. His replacement, Vinny, wasn't just a random character. He represented a glimpse into what the show could become without its moral compass, its voice of reason in a house full of chaos. The fact that Stewie was able to travel back in time to save Brian tells us something profound about the nature of time itself in this universe. Time travel isn't just a plot device in Family Guy. It's a fundamental force that shapes reality. Stewie's time machine isn't just some random invention. It's connected to a larger cosmic framework that governs how this universe operates. Consider this. Every time we see Stewie travel through time, reality doesn't just change, it fractures. We're shown multiple timelines existing simultaneously, each one revealing different aspects of the Griffin family's true nature. In some timelines, Peter never met Lois. In others, Meg is the favorite child. These aren't just alternate realities for comedy, they're glimpses into the infinite possibilities that exist when time itself becomes malleable. But time travel is just the beginning of Family Guy's cosmic horror. Let's talk about the multiverse theory that runs through the entire series. The show has explicitly confirmed that multiple universes exist, each with their own version of the Griffin family. We've seen evil versions, dog versions, even versions where the family members have completely different personalities and life paths. This multiverse concept becomes even more disturbing when you realize that some episodes might not be taking place in the same universe we started with. That feeling you get when character personalities seem inconsistent or when major events are forgotten. It might not be lazy writing. It might be because we're actually watching a different universe entirely. The chicken fights between Peter and Ernie represent something deeper than just extended fight sequences. They're battles between order and chaos, between different philosophical approaches to existence. Ernie represents structure, routine, and the mundane aspects of daily life. Peter represents pure unrestrained desire, and the rejection of social norms. Their fights aren't just physical confrontations, they're metaphysical battles for the soul of their shared reality. Each chicken fight escalates in scope and destruction, suggesting that these conflicts are affecting the fundamental fabric of their universe. The level of destruction they cause should realistically end civilization as we know it, yet everything returns to normal afterwards. This isn't cartoon logic. This is evidence of reality itself being reset after each confrontation, maintaining the status quo through cosmic intervention. Now let's examine the true nature of Stewie Griffin, perhaps the most complex character in the entire Family Guy universe. On the surface, he's a baby with advanced intelligence and homicidal tendencies. But dig deeper, and you'll find layers of psychological complexity that rival the greatest literary characters. Stewie's relationship with his sexuality isn't just character development. It represents the internal struggle between his intellectual advancement and his emotional immaturity. His confusion about his own identity reflects the broader theme of identity crisis that runs through the entire series. Every Griffin family member struggles with who they really are versus who they think they should be. His scientific inventions aren't just plot devices. They represent humanity's desire to control and manipulate reality itself. Stewie's time machine, his weather control device, his mind control technology, they're all attempts to impose order on a chaotic universe. But every time he uses these inventions, reality becomes more unstable, not less. The most disturbing aspect of Stewie's character is his relationship with Brian. Their friendship represents the only genuine emotional connection in the Griffin household, but it's also the most psychologically complex relationship in the series. Brian serves as both father figure and intellectual equal to Stewie, creating a dynamic that's simultaneously heartwarming and deeply troubling. Let's shift our focus to Meg Griffin, the most tragic character in the Family Guy universe. Her treatment by her family isn't just running gag. It's a systematic psychological experiment in how prolonged emotional abuse shapes personality development. Meg represents the scapegoat, the family member who absorbs all the dysfunction and toxicity so that the others can maintain their illusion of normalcy. But here's what most viewers miss. Meg isn't actually the weakest member of the Griffin family. She's the strongest. She endures constant psychological torture and emerges with her sanity relatively intact. In episodes where she finally snaps and fights back, we see glimpses of her true potential. She's not the victim. She's the survivor. The episodes where Meg temporarily gains popularity or success reveal something crucial about the Griffin family dynamic. They literally cannot function without having someone to blame and abuse. When Meg rises above her assigned role, the entire family structure begins to collapse. This suggests that their dysfunction isn't accidental. It's carefully maintained through deliberate psychological manipulation. Chris Griffin represents wasted potential and the tragedy of inherited dysfunction. His artistic abilities and occasional flashes of intelligence show us what he could become in a healthier environment. But he's trapped in a cycle of learned helplessness, modeled after his father's behavior patterns. Chris is what happens when natural talent is systematically crushed by family dysfunction. His relationship with his imaginary friend and his artistic pursuits aren't just character quirks. They're survival mechanisms, ways of maintaining some connection to his authentic self while navigating a family that demands conformity to their twisted value system. Peter Griffin himself is perhaps the most disturbing character when you really analyze his behavior patterns. He isn't just immature or irresponsible. He displays clear signs of multiple personality disorders, sociopathic tendencies, and complete lack of empathy for others. His actions regularly destroy lives, yet he never faces meaningful consequences. This isn't cartoon logic. This is evidence that Peter exists outside normal social and legal frameworks. He's protected by something larger than himself, some cosmic force that ensures his continued existence regardless of the chaos he creates. Peter Griffin isn't just a bad father and husband. He's an agent of chaos, a force of nature that exists to disrupt order and stability. His job history reveals something interesting about the economic reality of the Family Guy universe. He's worked for toy companies, television networks, and various other industries, often rising to positions of significant power despite his obvious incompetence. This suggests that the economic system itself is fundamentally broken, rewarding chaos and incompetence over skill and dedication. Lois Griffin's psychology is perhaps the most complex of all. The family members. She comes from wealth and privilege but chose to marry into dysfunction. This wasn't an accident or a mistake. It was a deliberate choice that reveals something dark about her character. Lois is addicted to drama and chaos. She could leave Peter at any time, but she stays because the dysfunction feeds something deep within her psyche. Her moments of extreme violence and rage aren't just comedy beats. They're glimpses into her true nature, carefully hidden beneath a facade of suburban respectability. Lois Pewterschmidt Griffin is potentially the most dangerous member of the family because she understands manipulation and control in ways the others don't. Her relationship with her wealthy family reveals the broader class dynamics at play in the Family Guy universe. The Pewterschmidts represent old money, established power structures, and systematic oppression disguised as respectability. Lois chose to reject that world, but she brought its values and methods into her marriage, creating a toxic hybrid of working-class dysfunction and upper-class manipulation. The town of Quahog itself is a character in this story, and its history reveals disturbing truths about American society. Founded on violence and maintained through systematic corruption, Quahog represents every small American town that's slowly dying while pretending everything is fine. The local government is openly corrupt, the police force is incompetent, and the social structures are designed to maintain inequality and dysfunction. Mayor West's obvious mental illness and continued political power isn't just absurd humor. It's commentary on how democratic systems can be manipulated by charismatic figures who appeal to voters' worst impulses. His policies are destructive and nonsensical, yet he remains popular because he validates the community's desire to avoid responsibility for their own problems. The recurring characters in Quahog each represent different aspects of American social dysfunction. Cleveland represents the loyal friend who enables destructive behavior rather than confronting it. Joe represents the warrior mentality that struggles to adapt to civilian life. Quagmire represents unchecked masculinity and sexual predation disguised as humor. But it's the relationship between these characters that reveals the true horror of the Family Guy universe. They're all trapped in cycles of mutual enablement, each one preventing the others from growing or changing. Their friendships aren't based on genuine affection or shared values. They're based on mutual need for validation of their worst impulses. The show's treatment of religion reveals another layer of its complex worldview. Religion in Family Guy isn't just mocked or dismissed. It's shown to be another system of control and manipulation, used by both believers and non-believers to justify their behavior and avoid taking responsibility for their actions. The various religious figures who appear throughout the series are almost universally corrupt, hypocritical, or mentally unstable. This isn't anti-religious sentiment. It's commentary on how spiritual concepts can be twisted to serve earthly power structures. The show suggests that genuine spirituality might exist, but it's constantly corrupted by human weakness and desire for control over others. Death himself appears as a recurring character, and his portrayal reveals something profound about the show's philosophy regarding mortality and meaning. Death isn't portrayed as evil or frightening. He's shown as tired, overworked, and occasionally compassionate. This suggests that mortality isn't the enemy in the Family Guy universe. Meaninglessness is the real enemy. The various celebrity encounters throughout the series serve a specific narrative function beyond simple humor. They represent the collision between fantasy and reality, between the Griffin family's delusional self-image and the actual impact they have on the world. Most celebrities in Family Guy are either destroyed by their encounter with the Griffins or reveal themselves to be just as dysfunctional and hollow. This pattern suggests that fame and success in their universe don't actually solve fundamental human problems. The celebrities are just as trapped in cycles of self-destruction and meaninglessness as the regular characters. Success becomes another form of prison, another way to avoid confronting deeper truths about existence and purpose. The show's handling of social and political issues reveals a deeply cynical worldview disguised as mindless entertainment. Every political position is shown to be equally corrupt and self-serving. Every social movement is revealed to have ulterior motives, Every attempt at progress is ultimately futile because human nature itself is fundamentally flawed. But here's where it gets interesting. This cynicism isn't presented as the final word. It's presented as the starting point for authentic human connection. Only after accepting the futility of external solutions do the characters occasionally find moments of genuine love, friendship, and meaning. These moments are rare and usually brief, but they represent the show's true message about what makes life worth living. The darker episodes of Family Guy, the ones that deal with serious topics like domestic violence, addiction, and mental illness, aren't just tonal experiments. They're glimpses into the reality that exists beneath the cartoon violence and crude humor. These episodes suggest that everything we've been laughing at is actually a coping mechanism, a way of dealing with trauma and pain that's too intense to face directly. Stewie and Brian's road trip episodes reveal this most clearly. When these two characters are alone together, away from the family dysfunction, their conversations become deeper and more meaningful. They discuss philosophy, mortality, and the nature of existence itself. These aren't just character development moments. They're the show's way of exploring serious themes without the distraction of constant humor. The time travel episodes create a complex mythology around cause and effect, free will, and determinism. When Stewie changes the past, the consequences ripple through reality in ways that suggest everything is connected to everything else. Small changes create massive alterations in the timeline, implying that individual choices have far more impact than we typically realize. But here's the disturbing part. Despite all the timeline changes and alternate realities, certain core patterns remain constant. The Griffin family dysfunction persists across multiple universes and timelines. This suggests that some aspects of human nature are so fundamental that they transcend individual choice and circumstance. The episodes that focus on Brian's writing career reveal the show's commentary on creative expression and artistic integrity. Brian's struggle to balance commercial success with authentic expression mirrors the show's own position in the entertainment landscape. Family Guy itself exists in the tension between meaningful content and commercial viability, between artistic expression and market demands. His relationship with other writers and artists in the series shows how creative communities can become toxic environments where competition and ego destroy the collaborative spirit that should drive artistic endeavors. The literary world in Family Guy is portrayed as pretentious, shallow, and ultimately meaningless. Yet Brian continues to pursue it because the alternative is accepting that his life has no greater purpose. The show's portrayal of education and intellectual development is particularly dark. Smart characters like Brian and Stewie are often shown to be more miserable than their less intelligent family members. Knowledge and awareness don't lead to happiness or fulfillment. They lead to greater understanding of how meaningless and chaotic existence really is. This anti-intellectual streak isn't promoting ignorance as bliss. It's questioning whether intelligence and education, as they currently exist in our society, actually serve human flourishing or just create new forms of suffering and alienation. The show suggests that wisdom might be different from intelligence, and that genuine understanding might require accepting mystery and uncertainty rather than seeking complete knowledge and control. The musical episodes and cutaway gags serve a specific psychological function beyond simple entertainment. They provide brief escapes from the relentless dysfunction of the main narrative. These moments of pure creativity and joy remind us what human beings are capable of when they're not trapped in cycles of self-destruction and mutual harm. But even these moments are tinged with sadness because they highlight how rare genuine happiness and creativity are in the Griffin family's daily life. The contrast makes their normal dysfunction seem even more tragic and unnecessary. As we reach the end of our deep dive into Family Guy's hidden lore, what emerges is a picture of a universe that's simultaneously hopeless and hopeful, meaningless and profound. The show presents human nature as fundamentally flawed and destructive, yet it also shows us moments of genuine love, creativity, and connection that make existence worthwhile despite its inherent tragedy. The Griffin family represents all of us at our worst and occasionally at our best. Their dysfunction is our dysfunction, magnified and exaggerated for comedic effect, but rooted in recognizable human weaknesses and fears. Their rare moments of genuine connection remind us that love and meaning are possible, even in the midst of chaos and pain. The true lore of Family Guy isn't hidden in elaborate conspiracy theories or complex mythologies. It's hidden in plain sight, in the psychological patterns and relationship dynamics that drive every episode. It's a show about damaged people trying to connect with each other and failing most of the time, but occasionally succeeding in ways that make all the failure worthwhile. And maybe that's the most profound truth of all. That meaning doesn't come from avoiding dysfunction and chaos, but from finding ways to love and connect despite the inevitable presence of dysfunction and chaos in all human relationships. The Griffins aren't aspirational characters. They're cautionary tales and sources of recognition, mirrors that reflect our own struggles with identity, purpose, and connection. So the next time you watch Family Guy, remember that you're not just watching crude humor and pop culture references. You're watching one of the most complex examinations of human nature ever created, disguised as mindless entertainment, but actually offering profound insights into what it means to be human in a universe that often seems indifferent to our suffering and our joy. Sweet dreams, and may your own family dysfunction be slightly less chaotic than the Griffins, but no less full of unexpected moments of love and meaning that make it all worthwhile. The lore of Family Guy is ultimately the lore of being human, and that's a story that never really ends. It just keeps evolving with each new episode of our own lives. Have you ever wondered why Family Guy feels like a fever dream that somehow makes perfect sense? Tonight we're diving deep into the bizarre, contradictory, and absolutely fascinating lore of one of television's most chaotic animated families. From timeline inconsistencies that would make Doctor Who writers jealous to character deaths that stick about as well as wet spaghetti on a wall, we're exploring every twisted corner of the Griffin universe. So grab your favorite blanket, settle in, and prepare for a journey through 20-plus years of animated madness that will either put you to sleep or keep you up all night questioning everything you thought you knew about Quahog. Let's start with something that will immediately make your brain hurt in the most soothing way possible. The Griffin family timeline is more tangled than Christmas lights that have been stored in your attic for 3 years. Peter Griffin has somehow managed to work at a toy factory, a brewery, and about 17 other jobs while maintaining the same age and living in the same house. His children have been attending high school for over 2 decades, which either makes them the worst students in Rhode Island or suggests that time moves differently in their universe. Consider this mind-bending fact that perfectly captures the show's relationship with continuity. In early seasons, Chris Griffin was clearly established as being 14 years old. Fast forward through hundreds of episodes, multiple presidential elections, and several major world events, and Chris is still somehow 14. The same applies to Meg, who has been stuck in her teenage nightmare for so long that she could probably qualify for some kind of Guinness World Record for longest adolescence in television history. But here's where it gets even more deliciously confusing. The show occasionally references real-world events that have happened during its run, suggesting that some time has passed in their universe. Characters mention current technology, reference recent movies, and sometimes even acknowledge that things have changed. Yet the core family dynamics, ages, and circumstances remain frozen in this perfect amber of animated time, where nothing truly progresses, but everything constantly evolves. This temporal flexibility isn't a bug in Family Guy's programming. It's actually one of its most genius features. By refusing to be bound by traditional continuity, the writers have created a sandbox where literally anything can happen. Peter can die and come back to life. The family can move to different locations and then inexplicably return home. Characters can have completely different backstories from episode to episode, and somehow it all just works within the show's internal logic. Speaking of death, let's talk about the most famous resurrection in Family Guy history, which reads like a bizarre fairy tale designed specifically for adults who need to process the concept of impermanence in the safest possible way. Brian Griffin, the intellectual dog who serves as the family's voice of reason when he's not being a pretentious writer stereotype, was killed off in what seemed like a permanent way. The internet collectively lost its mind, fans organized protests, and for a brief moment, it looked like the show had actually committed to a major permanent change. But then, in true Family Guy fashion, they brought him back through time travel shenanigans that made about as much sense as you'd expect. The whole arc became this perfect metaphor for how the show treats consequence and permanence. Nothing is ever truly gone. Nothing is ever truly permanent. But the emotional impact of these fake deaths still somehow manages to hit viewers right in the feelings. It's like a magic trick where you can see exactly how it's done, but still feel amazed when the rabbit appears. This approach to character mortality extends throughout the entire show's history. Characters have died, been resurrected, killed again, and come back so many times that death in the Family Guy universe feels more like a temporary inconvenience than an actual ending. It creates this weirdly comforting atmosphere where you never have to worry about permanent loss, because in this world, everything can be undone with enough creativity and complete disregard for logical consistency. Now let's drift into the geographical mysteries of Quahog, Rhode Island, a town that exists in a space that defies both physics and geography in ways that should probably concern the local authorities. According to various episodes, Quahog is simultaneously a small, close-knit community where everyone knows each other and a sprawling metropolis with enough infrastructure to support major television stations, multiple hospitals, and apparently an infinite number of bars for Peter to get kicked out of. The town's layout changes depending on what the episode requires, which creates this dreamlike quality where familiar locations can suddenly be in completely different places or have entirely new neighbors. The Griffin house sometimes has a backyard that extends for miles and sometimes appears to be crammed between other houses with barely enough room for a garbage can. It's like living inside a memory where the details shift and change based on what feels most important at any given moment. This geographical flexibility extends to the show's treatment of distance and travel time. Characters can walk to locations that should be hours apart, drive to places that exist in different states entirely, or somehow end up in foreign countries through a series of increasingly implausible coincidences. It creates this sense that the world of Family Guy operates on dream logic, where emotional distance matters more than physical distance, and where you can end up anywhere if the story needs you there. The town itself has a personality that shifts and changes like a living entity. Sometimes Quahog is presented as a typical New England community with normal problems and reasonable people. Other times, it's revealed to be home to the most bizarre collection of individuals ever assembled in one place, including but not limited to time travelers, aliens, talking animals, and people who seem to exist purely to serve as punchlines for increasingly elaborate jokes. Let's talk about the show's relationship with reality, which operates on multiple levels simultaneously in a way that would make philosophy professors weep with joy or frustration. Family Guy exists in a universe where talking babies, intellectually gifted dogs, and interdimensional travel are all perfectly normal and accepted parts of daily life. Yet somehow, the characters are constantly surprised by things that are far less remarkable than their everyday existence. Stewie Griffin, the family's infant mastermind, represents perhaps the most fascinating example of this reality-bending approach to storytelling. He's simultaneously a normal baby who requires diaper changes and feeding, and a genius inventor capable of creating time machines, death rays, and weather control devices. Other characters sometimes understand his advanced speech, and sometimes treat him like a normal baby, depending on what works best for the joke or story being told. This selective awareness extends throughout the entire cast and creates layers of reality that exist simultaneously without ever really contradicting each other. Brian is a dog who drives cars, drinks alcohol, and has complex romantic relationships with human women. Yet he also sometimes exhibits normal dog behaviors like chasing squirrels or getting excited about walks. The show never bothers to explain these contradictions because they don't need explanation in a universe where consistency is less important than entertainment value. The genius of this approach is that it mirrors how our own minds work when we're drifting off to sleep. In dreams, contradictory things can exist side by side without causing any distress. You can be simultaneously in your childhood home and your current apartment, talking to people who are both alive and dead, engaging in activities that make perfect sense within the dream context, but would be impossible in waking life. Family Guy captures this dream logic perfectly, creating a viewing experience that feels familiar and comforting even when it's completely absurd. Peter Griffin himself embodies this dream logic in human form. He somehow managed to maintain steady employment despite being fired from multiple jobs, sometimes in the same episode. His incompetence is legendary, yet he consistently stumbles into situations where his particular brand of chaos somehow saves the day, or at least doesn't cause permanent damage to anyone who matters. He's like the universe's way of proving that sometimes being completely unprepared for everything is actually the best preparation for anything. His relationship with his family operates on this same dream logic frequency. He clearly loves his wife and children, but he also regularly forgets their names, ignores their needs, and puts them in danger through his various schemes and misadventures. Yet somehow, these contradictions never destroy the family unit because love in the Family Guy universe is more about intention than action, more about showing up than being competent. The show's treatment of flashbacks and cutaway gags creates another layer of reality that exists parallel to the main narrative without ever quite intersecting with it in ways that make traditional sense. These segments often contradict established character histories or present completely different versions of events that supposedly happened in the same timeline. Rather than being confusing, these contradictions become part of the show's charm, like listening to someone tell you about their dreams, where all the details keep shifting but the emotional core remains consistent. Let's explore the mysterious depths of the show's pop culture obsession, which functions like a massive shared unconscious where every reference, parody, and homage exists simultaneously across multiple decades of entertainment history. Family Guy doesn't just reference popular culture, it exists inside it like a fish swimming through an ocean of collective memory. The show treats the entire history of television, movies, music, and celebrity culture as one enormous playground where everything is equally accessible and equally fair game for reinterpretation. This creates a viewing experience that feels like browsing through a vast library of cultural memories, where you might encounter references to obscure 1970s television shows alongside parodies of current internet memes. The temporal mixing of references contributes to the show's dreamlike quality, where past and present blur together in ways that feel natural within the context of the viewing experience, but would make no sense if you tried to map them chronologically. The character interactions within this cultural soup create their own form of logic that operates independently of real-world consistency. Characters can discuss events from different time periods, as if they all happened yesterday, reference movies that wouldn't exist in their established timeline, and demonstrate knowledge of cultural phenomena that should be completely outside their experience. Yet somehow, these anachronisms never feel jarring because they're delivered with such confidence and integration into the story flow. This approach to cultural reference creates a kind of comfort food for the brain, where familiar elements from your entertainment consumption history get mixed together in new combinations that feel both surprising and inevitable. It's like having someone remix your favorite songs in ways you never expected, but that somehow work perfectly for the mood you didn't know you were in. The show's relationship with its own history creates another fascinating layer of complexity that rewards long-term viewers while remaining accessible to newcomers. Jokes and storylines sometimes reference events from episodes that aired years earlier, creating this sense of continuity within the chaos. Characters will occasionally mention things that happened in previous seasons as if they actually matter to the ongoing narrative, even though the show regularly contradicts its own established facts. This selective continuity operates like a friendship where you share inside jokes and references that have built up over years of interaction, but you don't expect every conversation to reference everything that has ever happened between you. Some things matter, some things don't, and the distinction between what's important and what's forgettable shifts based on context and emotional relevance, rather than chronological significance. Family Guy's approach to emotional storytelling creates waves of feeling that wash over viewers in patterns designed to keep you engaged without overwhelming you with too much intensity. The show regularly shifts between completely absurd comedy and surprisingly touching moments of family connection, often within the same episode or even the same scene. This emotional rhythm mirrors the natural fluctuations of consciousness as you transition from waking awareness to sleep. The touching moments often come from unexpected sources and catch viewers off guard in ways that feel authentic despite occurring within completely artificial contexts. A conversation between Peter and his children might reveal genuine insight into parenting challenges, even though it takes place during a storyline involving time-traveling robots or interdimensional portals. These moments of sincerity exist alongside the absurdity without diminishing either aspect of the experience. The show's treatment of family dynamics operates on multiple emotional frequencies simultaneously. The Griffin family clearly cares about each other deeply, but they also regularly treat each other terribly in ways that would destroy real relationships. Yet somehow, the underlying love and commitment always reasserts itself when it really matters, creating this sense that no matter how chaotic or dysfunctional things get, the core connections remain solid. This emotional safety net allows viewers to enjoy the chaos without worrying about permanent damage to characters they've grown to care about. It's like watching a family of professional stunt performers who can survive any explosion or catastrophe because you know they're wearing invisible protective gear made of animated resilience and narrative necessity. The character of Lois Griffin represents perhaps the most complex emotional anchor in the show's universe. She's simultaneously the voice of reason and a participant in the chaos, capable of being both the responsible adult who keeps the family functioning and the enabler who allows Peter's schemes to continue destroying everything around them. Her character embodies the show's approach to moral complexity, where people can be simultaneously good and bad, smart and foolish, loving and selfish, without these contradictions canceling each other out. Her relationship with her family creates emotional touchstones that ground the show's more surreal elements in recognizable human experiences. Her frustration with Peter's behavior, her concern for her children's well-being, and her own occasional lapses into questionable judgment all feel authentic, despite occurring within completely unrealistic scenarios. She becomes the emotional center around which all the chaos can orbit safely. The supporting characters in Quahog create a community ecosystem that feels both intimately familiar and completely unpredictable. Neighbors like Joe, Quagmire, and Cleveland form a social network that somehow manages to remain stable despite regular exposure to Peter's reality-warping influence. Their friendship operates on the kind of dream logic where people can be simultaneously best friends and completely incompatible personalities, where loyalty and annoyance coexist without creating lasting conflict. These relationships mirror the kind of social connections that exist in small communities where people are stuck with each other regardless of whether they actually like each other. The result is a social dynamic where characters have learned to accept and work around each other's flaws rather than trying to change them, creating a sense of unconditional acceptance that's both touching and slightly disturbing. The show's approach to problem-solving reflects this same community dynamic, where issues are rarely resolved through traditional methods, but instead get worked around, ignored, or transformed into different problems that are somehow more manageable. Characters don't really grow and change in traditional narrative arcs, but they do develop coping strategies and adaptive behaviors that allow them to function within their chaotic environment. This creates a viewing experience that's surprisingly relaxing despite the constant chaos, because you learn to trust that somehow everything will work out in ways that might not make sense, but will feel satisfying within the show's internal logic. It's like being assured that no matter how complicated your dreams get, you'll always wake up in your own bed with all your problems exactly where you left them. The show's treatment of time and memory creates layers of nostalgia that operate simultaneously across multiple decades of cultural history. Episodes regularly feature flashbacks to different time periods that may or may not be consistent with previously established character histories, creating a sense that the past is fluid and changeable rather than fixed and determined. This approach to history mirrors how memory actually works in human consciousness, where details shift and change based on current emotional needs rather than maintaining strict factual accuracy. Characters sometimes remember the same events differently in different episodes, and these conflicting memories are presented as equally valid rather than evidence of inconsistent writing. This creates a universe where subjective experience matters more than objective truth, where what feels right is more important than what actually happened according to some external standard of accuracy. The result is a storytelling approach that feels surprisingly honest about how human memory and family mythology actually function. Families create shared stories about their history that serve emotional and social functions rather than documentary purposes. And these stories change over time to meet the evolving needs of the family system. Family Guy captures this dynamic perfectly by treating its own history as a living, breathing entity, rather than a fixed record of past events. As we reach the end of our journey through the wonderfully contradictory universe of Family Guy, it becomes clear that the show's greatest achievement might be its ability to create comfort through chaos, familiarity through absurdity, and relaxation through constant activity. The show operates like a perfect sleep aid for the modern mind, providing just enough stimulation to keep you engaged while maintaining just enough consistency to keep you feeling safe and secure. The lore of Family Guy isn't really about the specific details of character histories or plot continuities. Instead, it's about creating a universe where change and stability can coexist, where contradictions don't need resolution, and where the most important truth is that somehow everything always works out in the end, even when it doesn't make any logical sense. In a world where consistency and predictability often feel like distant memories, Family Guy offers the radical proposition that maybe coherence is overrated anyway. Maybe what we really need is a space where we can let go of our need for everything to make sense and just enjoy the ride, secure in the knowledge that no matter how weird things get, we're still fundamentally safe in this animated universe where love conquers all, even when love looks suspiciously like mutual tolerance for each other's most annoying qualities. So, as you drift off tonight, remember that somewhere in an animated Rhode Island, a family of lovable disasters continues their eternal cycle of chaos and reconciliation, proving night after night that sometimes the best stories are the ones that never really end. They just keep getting more interesting. Sweet dreams from Quahog, where nothing makes sense and everything works out exactly the way it should. Did you know that Family Guy has been secretly building one of the most complex and disturbing universes in television history? Tonight, we're diving deep into the hidden lore that connects every bizarre moment, every throwaway joke, and every seemingly random cutaway into something far more sinister than you ever imagined. Get comfortable, because what you're about to discover about the Griffin family and their world will completely change how you see this animated sitcom forever. Welcome to a journey through the darkest corners of Quahog, where nothing is quite what it seems, and every laugh might be masking something truly terrifying. I'm going to take you through the most mind-bending theories, hidden connections, and disturbing implications that have been hiding in plain sight for over 2 decades. This isn't just about cartoon humor anymore. This is about a carefully constructed reality where time itself breaks down, where characters live and die and return without explanation, and where the very fabric of existence seems to bend to the whims of a family that might not even be human. Let's start with something that's been bothering fans for years. Have you ever noticed how characters in Family Guy seem to exist in multiple states of reality simultaneously? Peter Griffin has died countless times throughout the series, yet he continues to appear in subsequent episodes with no explanation. This isn't just cartoon logic at work. There's something much deeper happening here, something that suggests the Griffin family exists outside the normal rules of life and death. Consider this carefully. In one episode, Peter is literally crushed by a falling piano. In another, he's shot point blank in the chest. He's been decapitated, blown up, and killed in ways too numerous to count. Yet he always returns, usually within the same episode, sometimes carrying the memory of his death, sometimes acting as if nothing happened at all. This pattern extends to every member of the family, creating what theorists call the resurrection phenomenon. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. The show has established that Peter remembers some of his deaths, but not others. In certain episodes, he makes direct references to previous fatal incidents, treating them as if they were merely inconvenient experiences rather than life-ending events. This suggests that the Griffin family exists in a state of quantum immortality, where their consciousness simply shifts to alternate timelines whenever they die in one reality. The implications of this are staggering. If the Griffins can't truly die, what does that make them? Are they some kind of interdimensional beings? Are they trapped in an endless cycle of death and rebirth? Or are they perhaps already dead, existing in some kind of purgatorial state where their worst impulses are allowed to manifest without permanent consequences? This theory gains even more weight when you examine the nature of their world. Quahog, Rhode Island, isn't just an ordinary small town. It's a place where the laws of physics bend and break on a daily basis. Characters regularly fall from impossible heights without injury, survive explosions that should level city blocks, and experience transformations that defy biological possibility. The town itself seems to reshape itself to accommodate whatever narrative demands the moment requires. Look at the Clam, the local bar where Peter spends most of his time. The interior layout changes from episode to episode, sometimes dramatically. Rooms appear and disappear, the building size fluctuates wildly, and the bar somehow manages to accommodate everything from small, intimate gatherings to massive concerts and events. This isn't just inconsistent animation. It's evidence that reality itself is malleable in Quahog. The same phenomenon affects the Griffin house. Rooms appear when needed and vanish when not required. The basement sometimes contains a simple laundry area. Other times, it's a vast underground complex with multiple levels and impossible architecture. The house has been destroyed and rebuilt so many times that it's essentially become a ship of Theseus' paradox. At what point did the original Griffin home cease to exist and become something else entirely? But the most disturbing aspect of Family Guy lore involves the nature of time itself in this universe. The show has been running for over 20 years, yet the characters haven't aged. Stewie remains a baby, Meg is still a teenager, and Chris continues through high school perpetually. This isn't just a cartoon convention. The show has explicitly addressed the passage of time on multiple occasions, creating paradoxes that suggest something is fundamentally wrong with how time functions in their reality. Consider Stewie's advanced intelligence and technological capabilities. This isn't just a genius baby. Stewie has access to time travel technology, advanced weaponry, and scientific knowledge that surpasses anything available in our reality. He's built nuclear weapons in his bedroom, created sentient robots, and developed interdimensional travel devices. These aren't the inventions of a human child, no matter how intelligent. They're the creations of something far beyond human understanding. The time travel episodes reveal even more disturbing implications. When Stewie and Brian travel through time, they encounter multiple versions of themselves and their family members. Some of these versions are dramatically different, suggesting that the timeline they inhabit is just one of countless variations. In some timelines, the family members have different personalities, different relationships, and different fates. This raises the question of whether the Griffins we follow are even the original versions of these characters, or just one set among infinite possibilities. Brian's character provides another piece of this cosmic puzzle. He's a dog who walks upright, drives cars, drinks alcohol, and engages in complex philosophical discussions. The show treats this as perfectly normal, but the implications are horrifying when you consider the biological impossibility of his existence. Brian isn't just an anthropomorphic cartoon character. He's an aberration, a violation of natural law that somehow exists within this distorted reality. Brian's atheism becomes particularly significant in this context. He's the only character who consistently questions the nature of existence and reality. His philosophical discussions with Stewie often touch on themes of mortality, consciousness, and the meaning of existence. It's as if Brian is the only character who recognizes that their reality is fundamentally wrong, yet he's trapped within it just like everyone else. The show's treatment of religion and spirituality adds another layer to this mystery. Characters regularly encounter divine beings, travel to heaven and hell, and interact with supernatural forces. These aren't metaphorical episodes or dreams. They're presented as literal experiences within the show's canon. Death himself is a recurring character, depicted as a fallible being who can be tricked, bargained with, or even temporarily replaced. This suggests that the afterlife in the Family Guy universe is just as chaotic and rule-bending as the mortal realm. Peter's encounters with God reveal perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this reality. God is portrayed as incompetent, petty, and frequently absent from his duties. He makes mistakes, gets involved in trivial disputes, and seems to have lost control of his own creation. If God himself is fallible and chaotic in this universe, it explains why reality operates with such inconsistent and disturbing rules. The chicken fights represent another crucial element in understanding the true nature of this reality. Peter's battles with Ernie the giant chicken aren't just random comedy sequences. They're reality-breaking events that cause massive destruction across Quahog, yet somehow never result in permanent consequences. Buildings are destroyed, innocent people are presumably killed, and the entire infrastructure of the town is regularly devastated. Yet everything returns to normal by the next episode, as if these catastrophic events never happened. This suggests that Quahog exists in a state of constant reset, where major traumatic events are simply erased from collective memory. The townspeople continue their lives as if nothing happened, which implies either mass amnesia or the existence of multiple parallel realities that overlap and replace each other. The chicken fights might actually be tears in the fabric of reality itself, moments when the artificial nature of their world becomes visible through the chaos. The cutaway gags provide even more evidence of reality distortion. When Peter begins a story with his characteristic phrase about a time that's worse than something else, the narrative literally shifts to a completely different reality. These aren't just flashbacks or memories. They're alternate dimensions where different rules apply and different versions of history have played out. The fact that Peter can access these realities at will suggests he has some level of interdimensional awareness or control. Some of these cutaway realities are obviously fictional, referencing movies, television shows, or historical events. But others seem to be genuine alternate versions of the Family Guy universe where small changes have created dramatically different outcomes. This creates a multiverse structure where Peter's consciousness can jump between realities, experiencing different versions of events and bringing that knowledge back to his primary timeline. Meg's role in this cosmic horror becomes clearer when you examine how other characters treat her. The family's abuse of Meg isn't just mean-spirited humor. It's ritualistic and consistent across all timelines and realities. Even in alternate universes where other aspects of their lives are different, the treatment of Meg remains constant. This suggests she serves some kind of specific function in maintaining the stability of their reality. Some theories propose that Meg is actually the anchor point that keeps their chaotic universe from completely falling apart. Her suffering might be the price paid for the family's immortality and reality-bending abilities. The more they abuse her, the more stable their impossible existence becomes. This would explain why even when Meg tries to improve her situation or gain acceptance, the universe seems to conspire against her, forcing her back into her role as the family scapegoat. Lois presents her own mysteries. Despite being married to Peter and living in the same chaotic reality, she often displays knowledge and abilities that seem beyond her apparent character. She's multilingual, has extensive combat training, has connections to wealthy and powerful families, and occasionally demonstrates skills that suggest a much more complex background than her suburban housewife persona would indicate. Her maiden name is Pewterschmidt, connecting her to a family of extreme wealth and influence. But the show has revealed that the Pewterschmidt fortune comes from sources that are never fully explained. They have connections to Nazi Germany, mysterious business dealings, and enough power to manipulate major political and economic events. This isn't just old money. This is money that comes from sources that operate outside normal human society. Lois's piano playing takes on new significance in this context. Music has always been associated with supernatural and reality-altering powers in mythology and fiction. When Lois plays piano, she often enters a trance-like state where she becomes completely absorbed in the music. Could her playing be some kind of ritual that helps maintain the stability of their distorted reality? Is she unconsciously channeling forces that keep their impossible world functioning? The town of Quahog itself contains numerous locations that defy logical explanation. The Drunken Clam Bar exists in a constant state of flux. Tom Tucker's news station somehow manages to cover every bizarre event that happens in town, no matter how impossible or reality-breaking it might be. The grocery store, the movie theater, and other local businesses seem to have unlimited resources and the ability to accommodate whatever the plot requires. But perhaps most disturbing is Quahog's relationship with the outside world. Characters regularly travel to other cities and countries, yet these locations often seem just as distorted and rule-breaking as Quahog itself. When the family goes to Europe, they encounter the same kind of impossible situations and reality-bending events they experience at home. This suggests that the distortion isn't limited to their hometown, but extends throughout their entire universe. Cleveland's move to Virginia and subsequent return provides another clue to the nature of their reality. During his absence, Cleveland had his own show in a different location with different characters and storylines. Yet when he returned to Quahog, he seamlessly reintegrated into the Family Guy universe as if nothing had changed. This suggests that characters can literally move between different fictional realities while maintaining their essential identities. The evil monkey in Chris's closet represents one of the most obvious supernatural elements that the family accepts without question. This isn't just a monkey that happens to live in their house. It's a malevolent entity that exists partially outside normal reality, able to appear and disappear at will, and possessing knowledge and abilities that suggest it's not bound by the same rules as other characters. When the evil monkey's backstory was finally revealed, it showed a complex history involving betrayal, revenge, and supernatural justice. But the fact that Chris lived with this entity for years without the family taking serious action suggests they're either unable to perceive the true nature of supernatural threats, or they're so accustomed to reality-bending phenomena that they've become desensitized to genuine danger. The show's treatment of violence provides another disturbing window into the nature of their reality. Characters regularly engage in brutal combat, use deadly weapons, and inflict injuries that should result in permanent disability or death. Yet these violent encounters rarely have lasting consequences. Bodies heal impossibly quickly, psychological trauma is ignored, and characters continue their relationships as if attempted murder was just a minor disagreement. This isn't just cartoon violence logic. The show has established that pain and injury do matter in their world. Characters react to pain, seek medical treatment, and sometimes suffer long-term consequences from their actions. But the threshold for what constitutes permanent harm seems to be much higher than in normal reality, suggesting that their physical forms are more resilient or fundamentally different from normal human bodies. The celebrity appearances in Family Guy create another layer of reality confusion. When real celebrities appear on the show, they're often portrayed in ways that are completely at odds with their real-world personas. Some are depicted as evil, others as incompetent, and many are shown in situations that would be impossible in reality. These aren't just parodies or satirical representations. They're presented as literal encounters within the show's universe. This raises questions about the relationship between the Family Guy universe and our reality. Are these actual alternate versions of real people? Or are they fictional constructs created by whatever force maintains their distorted world? The fact that these celebrity characters often have knowledge of events from the real world suggests some kind of connection to our reality, but their behavior and circumstances are so different that they can't be the same individuals. Adam West's portrayal as the mayor of Quahog provides the most extensive example of this phenomenon. The real Adam West was involved with the show for many years before his death, playing a version of himself that bore little resemblance to his actual personality. This fictional Adam West had supernatural experiences, engaged in bizarre political policies, and interacted with the Griffin family as if they were real people in his world. The fact that the real Adam West participated in creating this alternate version of himself suggests a blurring of the lines between fiction and reality that extends beyond the show's universe. It's as if the Family Guy reality has the ability to reach into our world and influence real people to participate in its narrative structure. The show's handling of historical events reveals another disturbing aspect of their reality. Characters regularly travel back in time to witness or participate in major historical moments, but their presence often changes the outcome of these events in ways that should have massive consequences for their present-day reality. Yet somehow the timeline always corrects itself, or the changes are ignored in subsequent episodes. This suggests that history itself is malleable in their universe, subject to constant revision and correction by forces that operate outside normal temporal mechanics. The Griffin family's ability to witness and alter historical events without permanent consequences implies they exist outside the normal flow of cause and effect. Stewie's sexual orientation and romantic relationships add another layer of complexity to the reality distortion. The show has never definitively established Stewie's sexuality, leaving it deliberately ambiguous despite numerous hints and references. This isn't just uncertainty about a character's personal life. It's as if Stewie exists in a state of quantum sexuality, where all possibilities remain open simultaneously. When Stewie does engage in romantic or sexual situations, they often involve time travel, alternate realities, or impossible circumstances. His relationship with himself from alternate timelines, his interactions with future versions of other characters, and his romantic encounters with beings from different realities all suggest that normal human relationship dynamics don't apply to him. Brian's romantic relationships follow similar patterns of reality distortion. He's been involved with human women, other dogs, and beings from alternate realities. These relationships are treated as normal within the show's universe, but they represent violations of biological and social norms that should be impossible in any consistent reality. The recurring theme of characters breaking the fourth wall provides perhaps the most direct evidence that they're aware of their fictional nature. When characters make references to the show itself, acknowledge the presence of cameras, or directly address the audience, they're demonstrating consciousness of their status as fictional constructs. Yet they continue to behave as if their reality is genuine and consequential. This creates a paradox where characters are simultaneously aware of their fictional nature and committed to maintaining the illusion of their reality. It's as if they're trapped in a performance they can't escape, forced to continue their roles even though they understand the artificial nature of their existence. The show's treatment of mental illness and psychological trauma becomes particularly disturbing when viewed through this lens. Characters regularly experience events that should result in severe psychological damage, yet they continue functioning as if nothing happened. Peter has been through countless traumatic experiences. Meg has suffered years of abuse and rejection, and Chris has dealt with supernatural threats and family dysfunction that should have lasting psychological effects. Their apparent immunity to psychological trauma suggests either that their minds operate differently from normal humans, or that the reality they inhabit somehow prevents the formation of lasting psychological damage. Either possibility raises questions about the fundamental nature of their consciousness and identity. The economic system of Quahog defies logical explanation. Peter works at a brewery, yet the family maintains a middle-class lifestyle that includes expensive vacations, constant dining out, and the ability to replace destroyed property without apparent financial strain. The cost of living in their reality seems to operate on completely different principles than any real economic system. Local businesses somehow manage to stay open despite constant destruction and the bizarre behavior of their customers. The bank continues to provide services, even though it's regularly robbed or destroyed. The hospital treats impossible injuries and supernatural conditions as routine medical cases. This suggests an economic system that operates independently of normal supply and demand principles. The show's treatment of technology reveals another aspect of their reality distortion. Characters have access to futuristic devices and impossible inventions, yet they also use outdated technology and live in what appears to be contemporary society. Time periods blend together in ways that suggest their reality exists outside normal temporal progression. Stewie's advanced technology coexists with Peter's primitive understanding of basic concepts. Lois uses modern communication devices while also displaying knowledge of historical events that she shouldn't have witnessed. This temporal confusion extends throughout their universe, creating a reality where past, present, and future exist simultaneously. The educational system in Quahog provides another window into the distorted nature of their reality. Chris and Meg attend high school, yet their education seems to consist primarily of bizarre adventures and encounters with supernatural phenomena. Their teachers are often incompetent or malevolent, and the curriculum appears to have no connection to real educational standards. Despite this chaotic educational environment, the characters somehow maintain enough knowledge to function in society. They can read, write, and perform basic mathematical calculations when the plot requires it, yet they also display shocking ignorance about fundamental concepts. This selective competence suggests that knowledge in their reality is distributed based on narrative necessity rather than logical learning processes. Religious and spiritual experiences in the Family Guy universe are treated as literal events rather than matters of faith or belief. Characters regularly encounter angels, demons, divine beings, and supernatural forces as physical presences in their world. These encounters often contradict established religious doctrines and present theological concepts in chaotic and illogical ways. The fact that multiple religious and spiritual systems seem to exist simultaneously in their reality suggests a universe where belief itself shapes existence. Different characters' spiritual experiences reflect their personal expectations rather than consistent universal truths, implying that reality adapts itself to accommodate conflicting belief systems. As we reach the end of this exploration into the hidden depths of Family Guy lore, the picture that emerges is far more complex and disturbing than the surface comedy would suggest. We're looking at a universe where the fundamental laws of reality are constantly in flux, where consciousness and identity operate on principles that defy normal understanding, and where the characters exist in a state of perpetual uncertainty about their own nature and existence. The Griffin family isn't just a dysfunctional cartoon family. They're entities, trapped in a reality that operates outside the normal rules of existence, forced to repeat patterns of behavior while occasionally glimpsing the artificial nature of their world. Their immortality comes at the cost of genuine growth and change. Their relationships are defined by roles they cannot escape, and their reality is maintained through forces they cannot understand or control. This hidden lore transforms Family Guy from a simple, animated comedy into something resembling cosmic horror, where the greatest terror isn't monsters or supernatural threats, but the gradual realization that existence itself might be fundamentally meaningless and arbitrary. The character's ability to laugh and find humor in their situation becomes an act of defiance against the absurdity of their existence, or perhaps the only coping mechanism available to consciousness trapped in an impossible reality. Sweet dreams, and remember that sometimes the most disturbing truths hide behind the most innocent laughter. Did you know that Family Guy has been secretly building one of the most complex fictional universes on television for over 2 decades? And tonight we're diving deep into every hidden connection, conspiracy theory, and mind-bending detail that will either put you to sleep or keep you awake all night thinking about how Brian Griffin might actually be the smartest character in animated television history. Welcome to the most comprehensive exploration of Family Guy lore ever assembled, where we'll uncover the hidden patterns that connect seemingly random episodes across 20-plus seasons, reveal the dark psychological underpinnings of Peter Griffin's behavior, and examine why this seemingly simple animated sitcom contains more philosophical depth than most people realize. Let's start with something that seems innocent on the surface but becomes deeply unsettling when you really think about it. The fact that Stewie Griffin, a 1-year-old baby, possesses technology that surpasses anything available in our current reality. His time machine alone represents engineering capabilities that would revolutionize human civilization. Yet nobody in his family seems to notice or care that their infant has created devices that violate the fundamental laws of physics as we understand them. The implications of Stewie's inventions extend far beyond simple comedy. When you consider that he's built ray guns, mind control devices, teleportation equipment, and vehicles capable of interdimensional travel, all while maintaining the physical and cognitive limitations of a toddler. This suggests either that the Griffin family exists in a universe where the laws of science operate completely differently, or that Stewie himself represents something far more extraordinary than a precocious child. Think about the episodes where Stewie travels through time and encounters multiple versions of himself from different timelines. Each iteration of Stewie possesses the same impossible technological capabilities, which implies that his genius transcends individual timeline variations. This consistency across dimensional boundaries suggests that Stewie's intelligence might be a fundamental constant in the Family Guy multiverse, rather than a random genetic anomaly. But here's where things get really interesting when we examine the relationship between Stewie's technological capabilities and Brian's intellectual development throughout the series. Brian Griffin starts as a relatively normal talking dog who enjoys literature and maintains liberal political views. However, as the seasons progress, his personality becomes increasingly complex, cynical, and philosophically sophisticated, almost as if he's being influenced by prolonged exposure to Stewie's advanced technology and interdimensional adventures. The evolution of Brian's character raises questions about the nature of consciousness and intelligence in the Family Guy universe. If a dog can develop human-level cognitive abilities and engage in complex, philosophical discussions, then what does this say about the fundamental nature of reality in Quahog? The fact that Brian's intelligence continues expanding throughout the series while other characters remain relatively static suggests that something unique is happening to him. Specifically, consider the episodes where Brian dies and is replaced by Vinny, the replacement dog, who, despite being the same species, lacks Brian's intellectual capabilities. This proves that Brian's intelligence isn't simply a species-wide trait, but something specifically tied to his individual consciousness. The temporary replacement storyline also demonstrates how integral Brian has become to the family dynamic, not just as a pet, but as a legitimate family member whose absence creates genuine emotional trauma. The relationship between Brian and Stewie represents one of the most complex friendships in animated television, spanning adventures through time, space, and alternate dimensions. Their bond transcends typical pet-owner relationships and approaches something resembling true intellectual partnership. This dynamic becomes even more fascinating when you consider that their adventures often involve visiting timelines where their relationship takes different forms, sometimes as friends, sometimes as enemies, and occasionally as something approaching equals moving deeper into Family Guy lore. We encounter the recurring theme of Peter Griffin's seemingly limitless capacity for causing destruction, while somehow avoiding serious consequences. Peter has crashed vehicles through buildings, started international incidents, caused environmental disasters, and engaged in behavior that would realistically result in imprisonment or death. Yet he continues living his suburban lifestyle with minimal repercussions for his actions. This pattern suggests that Peter might exist within some kind of protective narrative bubble, where conventional rules of cause and effect don't apply in the same way they would for normal people. The consistency of his survival across increasingly dangerous situations implies either supernatural intervention or existence within a simulated reality where certain characters are programmed to be essentially indestructible. The Griffin family's relationship with death itself provides another layer of complexity to the series' lore. Multiple characters have died and been resurrected, Brian's temporary death being the most notable example, but there are numerous instances where characters should have died, but somehow survived catastrophic events. This casual relationship with mortality suggests that the Family Guy universe operates under different existential rules than our reality. Quahog itself emerges as a character in the series when you examine how the town responds to the Griffin family's constant chaos. Despite Peter's regular destruction of property and public safety, the community continues functioning normally as if nothing happened. This resilience suggests either that Quahog exists outside normal space-time, or that the town itself possesses some kind of regenerative properties that allow it to recover from damage. The recurring characters in Family Guy form an intricate web of relationships that span decades of episodes, each bringing their own psychological complexities to the narrative. Cleveland Brown's departure and return to the series creates interesting questions about character continuity and the nature of friendship in long-running animated series. His experiences in his own spin-off show technically exist within the same universe, but rarely get referenced in Family Guy proper, creating a kind of parallel narrative space. Glenn Quagmire represents perhaps the most problematic character in terms of Family Guy lore, because his behavior often crosses lines that would be completely unacceptable in real life. Yet he's treated as a quirky neighbor rather than a legitimate threat. This treatment reveals something disturbing about the moral framework of the Family Guy universe, where certain types of harmful behavior are normalized through repetition and comedic presentation. The Chicken Man fights between Peter and Ernie. The giant chicken deserves special attention because they represent some of the most elaborately choreographed sequences in the entire series. These battles often span multiple locations, involve massive collateral damage, and demonstrate fighting capabilities that far exceed what either character should possess based on their apparent physical attributes. The chicken fights serve as almost mythological episodes within the series where normal rules are completely suspended. When examining these extended fight sequences, you notice they follow patterns similar to classic mythology, where heroes and monsters engage in battles that reshape the landscape around them. The destruction caused during these fights would realistically devastate Quahog's infrastructure and economy. Yet everything returns to normal by the next episode, as if these epic confrontations exist in a separate reality layer. The cutaway gags that Family Guy is famous for create their own complex narrative space where characters interact with historical figures, fictional characters, and alternate versions of themselves. These brief sequences often contain more concentrated storytelling than entire episodes of other shows, and they've created a vast library of micro-narratives that exist alongside the main Family Guy timeline. Some cutaway gags reference each other across seasons, creating a meta-narrative about the nature of memory and storytelling within the Family Guy universe. The fact that characters sometimes remember events from cutaway gags in later episodes suggests that these sequences aren't just comedic diversions, but actual experiences that exist within the characters' shared reality. The show's treatment of religion and spirituality adds another layer to its lore, with multiple episodes exploring different afterlife concepts. Divine intervention scenarios and questions about the nature of good and evil. Death appears as a recurring character who seems genuinely concerned about maintaining cosmic balance, which implies that the Family Guy universe operates under specific metaphysical rules. Episodes featuring death reveal that the afterlife in Family Guy functions more like a bureaucracy than a spiritual realm with specific procedures for soul collection and processing. This bureaucratic approach to mortality suggests that existence in the Family Guy universe might be more regulated and systematic than it initially appears, despite the surface-level chaos. The time travel episodes create fascinating paradoxes and timeline complications that the show sometimes acknowledges and sometimes completely ignores. This inconsistent approach to temporal mechanics suggests that time itself might function differently in the Family Guy universe, perhaps operating more like a narrative device than a fixed physical law. Stewie's time travel adventures often involve meeting historical figures who react to him as if talking babies are perfectly normal. This consistency across different time periods implies that the unusual characteristics of Family Guy characters might be universal constants that exist across all timelines rather than modern anomalies. The show's relationship with celebrity culture creates interesting questions about the nature of reality within its universe. Real celebrities often appear as themselves, but they interact with the fictional Griffin family as if they're legitimate public figures. This blending of real and fictional personalities suggests that the Family Guy universe might exist parallel to our own reality rather than completely separate from it. When celebrities appear in Family Guy, they often display exaggerated versions of their public personas, which raises questions about whether these are the actual celebrities or fictional representations based on public perception. The show's treatment of celebrity interactions reveals something interesting about how fictional universes can comment on and interact with real-world culture. The evolution of animation quality throughout Family Guy's run creates its own meta-narrative about the nature of visual reality within the show. Early episodes feature simpler animation styles, while later seasons display increasingly sophisticated visual effects. This progression mirrors technological advancement in our reality, but within the show it might represent something deeper about the nature of visual perception in the Family Guy universe. Episodes that specifically reference the show's animation style or production history create fascinating recursive loops where characters become aware of their fictional nature without fully breaking the fourth wall. These moments suggest that the characters might exist on multiple levels of reality simultaneously, both as fictional constructs and as conscious beings within their own universe. The Griffin family's economic situation provides another layer of complexity because Peter's job history and income level should realistically make their lifestyle impossible. Yet they maintain a suburban home, support multiple vehicles, and finance Stewie's expensive scientific experiments. This economic impossibility suggests that traditional rules of finance and resource management don't apply in the Family Guy universe. Episodes that focus on the family's financial struggles reveal that they do face economic consequences, but these problems get resolved through increasingly absurd means that wouldn't work in real life. This pattern implies that the Griffin family exists within a narrative framework where problems require narrative solutions rather than realistic ones. The show's treatment of education and intelligence creates interesting patterns when you examine how different characters learn and grow. Brian's intellectual development contrasts sharply with Peter's consistent ignorance, despite both characters having access to similar information and experiences. This disparity suggests that intelligence in the Family Guy universe might be more fixed and character-specific than it is in reality. Stewie's advanced knowledge, despite his infant status, raises questions about how learning and development work in this fictional universe. His vocabulary and technical expertise far exceed what any child could realistically possess. Yet other baby characters in the show display normal infant behavior. This inconsistency implies that Stewie's intelligence might be supernatural rather than developmental. The recurring theme of alternate dimensions and parallel universes in Family Guy creates a complex multiverse structure where different versions of familiar characters exist with varying personality traits and life circumstances. These alternate reality episodes suggest that the main Family Guy timeline is just one possible configuration among infinite variations. When characters travel between dimensions, they often encounter versions of themselves that made different life choices or develop different personality traits. This concept implies that character identity in the Family Guy universe might be more fluid and circumstantial than it initially appears. The multiverse episodes also raise questions about free will and determinism within the show's cosmology. The show's approach to historical events creates fascinating anachronisms and alternative history scenarios that suggest the Family Guy universe might exist in a timeline that diverges from our own reality in subtle but important ways. Episodes set in historical periods often include modern elements that shouldn't exist, which implies either time travel influence or an alternate historical development. Family Guy's treatment of technology advancement shows interesting patterns where some innovations appear decades ahead of schedule, while others lag behind realistic development timelines. This inconsistent technological progression suggests that innovation in the Family Guy universe might be driven by different factors than in our reality. The psychological depth of individual characters becomes more apparent when you examine their behavior patterns across multiple seasons. Peter's childlike wonder and destructive impulses suggest possible developmental disorders or psychological trauma that the show explores through comedy rather than serious analysis. This approach reveals character complexity while maintaining entertainment value. Brian's intellectual pretensions and emotional vulnerabilities create a character study about the relationship between intelligence and happiness. His struggles with depression, alcoholism, and unfulfilled artistic ambitions represent serious psychological themes disguised as animated comedy. This layered characterization demonstrates how Family Guy uses humor to explore deeper human experiences. Lois Griffin's role as the family anchor reveals interesting dynamics about gender roles and family stability in dysfunctional households. Her ability to maintain sanity while managing Peter's chaos, Stewie's schemes, and the general dysfunction suggests either extraordinary psychological resilience or possible supernatural intervention. The supporting characters in Family Guy each contribute to a larger tapestry of human behavior and social commentary. Joe Swanson's disability and heroic personality create discussions about capability and determination, while Mayor West's bizarre behavior comments on political leadership and civic responsibility. As we reach the end of this exploration into Family Guy lore, it becomes clear that what appears to be a simple animated sitcom actually contains layers of philosophical complexity, psychological depth, and narrative sophistication that reward careful analysis. The show's ability to maintain comedic entertainment while exploring serious themes demonstrates the power of animation as a storytelling medium. Whether you're drifting off to sleep or staying awake, thinking about these connections, Family Guy continues evolving and adding new layers to its already complex mythology. Each episode contributes to a larger narrative about family dysfunction, American culture, and the absurd nature of modern existence, wrapped in accessible animated comedy that somehow makes profound observations about the human condition feel effortlessly entertaining and surprisingly profound. Have you ever wondered what happens when you dive deep into the chaotic world of Family Guy at 3 in the morning? Tonight, we're exploring the surprisingly intricate lore behind one of television's most outrageous animated families. And trust me, there are secrets hiding in plain sight that will completely change how you see this show forever. Picture this. You're settling in for the night, your mind racing with the day's stress, and you need something familiar yet engaging enough to help you drift off. Family Guy might seem like simple comedy on the surface, but beneath those crude jokes and cutaway gags lies a surprisingly complex universe filled with recurring mysteries, hidden connections, and character developments that span over 2 decades of television history. Let's start our journey in the fictional town of Quahog, Rhode Island, where the Griffin family has been causing mayhem since 1999. But here's something most viewers never notice. Quahog isn't just a random setting. The name itself comes from the Quahog clam, native to Rhode Island waters, and creator Seth MacFarlane chose this location specifically because Rhode Island represents the perfect blend of New England quaintness and working-class authenticity that defines the show's core identity. The Griffin House at 31 Spooner Street has been the epicenter of countless adventures. But have you ever stopped to consider the layout and how it defies basic architectural logic? The house seemingly changes size depending on the episode's needs, with rooms appearing and disappearing like something out of a fever dream. This isn't sloppy animation. It's actually a subtle running gag that reflects the show's relationship with reality itself. Peter Griffin, the patriarch of this dysfunctional clan, represents more than just comic relief. His character serves as a commentary on American masculinity in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Born in Francis Griffin's shadow, Peter's rebellious nature stems from years of religious oppression and emotional neglect. His mother, Mickey McFinnigan, reveals Peter's Irish heritage, explaining his love for drinking and fighting, but also his deep-seated need for acceptance and belonging. The complexity of Peter's psychology becomes apparent when you examine his relationship with his father-in-law, Carter Pewterschmidt. Despite Carter's obvious disdain for Peter, their dynamic reveals Peter's desperate need for patriarchal approval. This psychological wound drives many of Peter's most destructive behaviors, from his get-rich-quick schemes to his constant need to prove his worth through increasingly ridiculous stunts. Lois Griffin, voiced by the talented Alex Borstein, carries secrets that run deeper than most viewers realize. Born into the wealthy Pewterschmidt family, Lois chose to marry Peter against her family's wishes, but her motivations aren't purely romantic. Her character arc reveals a woman torn between her privileged upbringing and her desire for authenticity. The episodes where we glimpse her past as a rebellious teenager and young adult show someone who used Peter as an escape from the suffocating world of high society expectations. But here's where things get interesting. Lois possesses a dark side that emerges throughout the series. Her time as a kleptomaniac, her brief career as a boxer, and her moments of extreme violence suggest that beneath her suburban mother facade lies someone capable of extraordinary ruthlessness. This duality makes her one of the most psychologically complex characters in the entire series. Meg Griffin, often dismissed as the show's punching bag, actually represents one of television's most tragic figures when you examine her story closely. The eldest Griffin child endures constant abuse and neglect from her family, yet continues to seek their approval with heartbreaking persistence. Her character development over the years reveals someone who has internalized her family's treatment to the point where she believes she deserves their cruelty. The episodes that focus on Meg's inner life reveal depths of loneliness and desperation that border on the genuinely disturbing. Her brief moments of happiness, whether through fleeting romantic connections or temporary acceptance from her peers, become incredibly poignant when viewed against the backdrop of her usual suffering. Some fans theorize that Meg represents the collateral damage of dysfunctional family systems, showing how children can become scapegoats for their parents' unresolved issues. Chris Griffin, the middle child, embodies the show's approach to adolescent confusion and sexual awakening. His character walks the line between innocent and disturbing, reflecting the awkward reality of teenage development. Chris's artistic talents, particularly his drawing abilities, suggest hidden depths beneath his seemingly simple exterior. His relationship with his imaginary friend and his various romantic pursuits reveal someone struggling to understand his place in both his family and the wider world. The youngest Griffin, Stewie, presents perhaps the most fascinating character study in the entire series. Initially conceived as an evil genius baby bent on world domination and matricide, Stewie's character has evolved into something far more nuanced. His relationship with his sexuality, his friendship with Brian, and his gradual abandonment of his villainous schemes reflect a character coming to terms with his own identity in a world that doesn't understand him. Stewie's time travel adventures aren't just comedy devices, they represent his desire to escape or fix the circumstances of his existence. His future selves, whether successful or struggling, always seem dissatisfied with their lives, suggesting that Stewie's fundamental problem isn't his circumstances, but his inability to accept himself and his place in the world. Brian Griffin stands apart as the family's conscience, but his role as the moral center becomes increasingly problematic as the series progresses. His liberal politics, artistic pretensions, and romantic struggles make him a deeply flawed character who often embodies the worst aspects of intellectual arrogance. The show's treatment of Brian reflects its complicated relationship with its own political messaging and cultural commentary. Brian's death and resurrection storyline remains one of the most emotionally powerful arcs in the series, revealing just how central he had become to the show's emotional core. His relationship with Stewie provides some of the series' most genuine moments of connection and growth, offering a stark contrast to the chaos that defines most other character interactions. The extended cast of Quahog residents creates a rich tapestry of recurring characters that flesh out the show's universe. Glenn Quagmire, the Griffin's hypersexual neighbor, initially appears as simple comic relief, but deeper examination reveals a character struggling with serious psychological issues. His animosity toward Brian stems from more than just personality conflicts. It represents a clash between different approaches to masculinity and moral philosophy. Cleveland Brown's departure from the series to star in his own spin-off created a noticeable shift in the show's dynamic. His return brought back a stabilizing presence that had been missing, highlighting how important his character was to the group's chemistry. Cleveland's patient, reasonable nature often served as a counterpoint to Peter's impulsiveness and Quagmire's excess. Joe Swanson's character provides representation for disability in animation while avoiding most of the typical pitfalls. His determination to maintain his career as a police officer despite his paralysis, combined with his competitive nature and occasional outbursts of rage, creates a multifaceted character who refuses to be defined solely by his disability. The show's approach to continuity creates an interesting paradox. While individual episodes often ignore established character development and reset relationships to their baseline, certain elements carry forward throughout the series. Character deaths, major life changes, and relationship developments sometimes stick while others are completely forgotten by the next episode. This selective continuity reflects the show's unique position between traditional sitcom structure and the more serialized storytelling that has become common in modern television. The writers pick and choose which developments to maintain based on their comedic potential and character impact rather than strict adherence to realistic progression. The show's relationship with pop culture goes beyond simple references and parodies. Family Guy has become a cultural touchstone itself, with its cutaway gag structure influencing countless other animated series. The show's willingness to break the fourth wall and acknowledge its own existence as a television program creates a metatextual layer that rewards longtime viewers while potentially confusing newcomers. The series' cancellation and revival story has become part of its own mythology. The fan campaign that brought the show back from cancellation in 2005 demonstrated the passionate loyalty of its audience and gave the series a second chance that most canceled shows never receive. This resurrection allowed the show to evolve and mature in ways that might not have been possible during its original run. The animation style itself has undergone subtle but significant changes over the years. Early episodes featured rougher, more expressive character designs that gradually evolved into the cleaner, more standardized look of later seasons. These changes reflect both technological improvements and shifts in the show's production values as it became increasingly successful. Voice acting remains one of the show's greatest strengths, with Seth MacFarlane's versatility allowing him to voice multiple main characters while maintaining distinct personalities for each. The supporting voice cast, including Alex Borstein, Seth Green, and Mila Kunis, brings consistency and chemistry that grounds even the most outrageous storylines in recognizable human emotions. The show's musical elements deserve special recognition for their sophistication and variety. From Stewie and Brian's elaborate musical numbers to Peter's impromptu songs, music serves as both comedic device and emotional outlet. The production values of these musical segments often rival those of dedicated musical programs, demonstrating the creative team's commitment to excellence across all aspects of the show. Family Guy's influence on internet culture cannot be overstated. Countless memes, reaction GIFs, and viral videos have emerged from the show's vast catalog of episodes. The series' quotability and visual humor translate perfectly to social media platforms, ensuring its continued relevance with new generations of viewers who might discover it through digital clips rather than traditional television broadcasts. The show's controversial moments and boundary-pushing humor have generated significant debate about the limits of comedy and the responsibilities of creators. These controversies, while sometimes damaging to the show's reputation, have also kept it in the cultural conversation and demonstrated its power to provoke strong reactions from viewers. International versions and adaptations of Family Guy reveal how the show's humor translates across different cultures. While some jokes lose their impact in translation, the core family dynamics and character relationships remain universally recognizable. suggesting that the show taps into fundamental aspects of family dysfunction that transcend cultural boundaries. The merchandising empire built around Family Guy reflects its status as a cultural phenomenon. From action figures and clothing to video games and mobile apps, the Griffin family has become a brand unto itself. This commercial success has provided financial stability that allows the creative team to take risks and experiment with different storytelling approaches. Behind-the-scenes stories from the show's production reveal the collaborative nature of its creative process. Writers, animators, and voice actors all contribute to the development of storylines and character moments, creating a more organic creative environment than the top-down approach used by many animated series. The show's relationship with censorship and broadcast standards has evolved over time, with later episodes featuring content that would have been impossible during the series' early years. This gradual relaxation of standards reflects broader changes in television content policies and audience expectations. Academic analysis of Family Guy has produced numerous scholarly papers examining its cultural impact, narrative structure, and social commentary. These serious examinations of what many dismiss as lowbrow entertainment reveal the complexity hidden beneath the show's irreverent surface. The series' longevity has allowed it to comment on changing social attitudes and cultural shifts over more than 2 decades. Episodes from different eras reflect the concerns and preoccupations of their respective time periods, creating an inadvertent chronicle of American culture's evolution. Future storylines and character developments remain unpredictable, as the show's willingness to subvert expectations and challenge viewer assumptions continues to drive its creative choices. The balance between maintaining familiar character dynamics and allowing for growth and change represents an ongoing challenge for the creative team. Fan theories about hidden meanings, secret connections, and future plot developments demonstrate the active engagement of the show's audience. These theories, while often reaching far beyond the creator's actual intentions, reveal the deep investment viewers have in the show's fictional universe and characters. The show's treatment of sensitive topics has evolved over time, reflecting both changing social standards and the creator's own growth and development. While early episodes sometimes relied on shock value and transgressive humor, later seasons have shown more nuanced approaches to difficult subjects. As you drift off to sleep tonight, consider how Family Guy has woven itself into the fabric of popular culture while maintaining its essential identity as a story about one deeply flawed but ultimately loving family. The Griffin clan's adventures may be absurd and their behavior often inexcusable, but their struggles with identity, acceptance, and belonging reflect universal human experiences that resonate with audiences around the world. Sweet dreams, and remember that no matter how chaotic your own family might seem, at least you're not dealing with a time-traveling baby, a talking dog with writer's block, and a father who once fought a giant chicken in an epic multi-episode battle that destroyed half of downtown Quahog.